if I'll have everybody mute their microphone and turn off their video. If you want to ask a question, you can hold the space bar down and that will temporarily unmute you. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our guests. Tonight, our guests are Evelyn Billo and Robert Mark. Their presentation will be on Sears Point, Arizona Rock Imagery Documentation Update, one of their larger 4-year petroglyph documentation projects. They've traveled worldwide in their 44-year quest to visit, photograph, document, and study traditional indigenous peoples' understanding of their rock imagery. Combined, their interests are in our geology, photography, archaeology, computers, and aerial mapping via drones. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. And you can start your PowerPoint whenever you would like.
There we are. Okay. You've already seen the first 5 slides, guys. I do like to seriously start presentations with the fact that actually tonight being on Zoom, we're here in Flagstaff, which is located near the San Francisco Peaks. And RCS there stands for Rupestrian Cyber Services. And this is an area that's obviously sacred to Native Americans throughout the region. And so we acknowledge that we're here. We acknowledge the ancestors who were here before, and we respect their sites, and we ask that you do too. And in our case, we try to use current technology to document these images on stone. And so you're going to get a brief update. I hope it's within an hour of the work we did in 4-year project down in southwestern Arizona, right there in that star. Now, of course, Sears Point's a lot smaller than that star on this scale, but when I give this talk, which I've given at international societies, they need to know where this is in the Southwest US. So that's how come that particular picture got left in. But this purple arrow here gives you a much better idea for those of you who I should have asked. There's only 11 of us. Show of hands, I don't know, maybe Richard can say how many people say, yes, they've been to Sears Point. Am I talking to newbies or have you all been there? That's what I'm sort of curious about. I know Richard's been there.
Yes, everybody here is a newbie.
Oh, all right. Well, then you need to know it's right here, this red dot that's just west of the Yuma-Maricopa County line. And this little blue wiggly line that goes here is Yuma, is the Gila River. And here, up here, is Gila Bend. And so it's got this big bend. And I'm pointing all this out because I'm just going to show you some topography and where we are with respect to where the river is. And I thought it was of interest that how many sites, and this was back in the 2008-2012 timeframe. There's lots more known now, but this gives you a general feel for where we are and the sites that were there. And what's of interest is there were only 3 sites that had paintings, Tinajas Altos and one that's underneath over here. Bob will have to tell you which one it is. I've already forgotten its name. Painted rocks. There are 3 that had paint, and all the rest are petroglyphs or archaeological sites or geoglyphs and intaglios. So that little area I was just showing you, that gray spot, this is what it looks like on the ground. So Yes, it's large, it's expansive, it's well, Richard can tell you he only did this little part here and just was blown away, weren't you, Richard, on how much was there? Uh,
Oh, yes, that was very interesting and quite a bit of petroglyphs.
and there's all over here also, and the parking areas down here if and when you ever do go. Um, and we had well, these are just some of the results um, that and updates to what we did for this project from 2008 to 2012. By the way, that's the parking area would be right down here. So you would not see this glyph um, from the parking area. You'd have to climb up the trail to get up to see. This is one of those sort of type glyphs of the Sears Point area. And some people have called it Hohokam, but others have said, no, it's probably Patayan. I don't know. Except that it's one of my favorite glyphs.
Yeah, that one's a very beautiful one. We never did see it when we were there.
Need another trip. Get a field trip with the
Oh,
group.
yes. We're gonna
Oh,
have to
it's a
make.
long ways. Yep, you'd really have to work at it. Well, as well, I didn't allude to, but this site has with that many individual elements and panels and space. This was so close to the Gila River and the resources there. It's on a salt trail of known groups. And so 15 separate tribes claim affiliation down here. And so that's a very complex region. And at the time we did this report, this was what the sort of overview, maybe these are where these particular cultures are. But as we get more data, and that's why we're doing this update, because we have a lot more understanding now. And we have worked with Aaron Wright and Archaeology Southwest, and in their magazine of 2016, they had this updated map of the different styles in the area. And Sears Point, remember that little curve Gila Bend here? Well, Sears Point's right about there in the lowland Patayan style. And these are two of the images that are from Sears Point that are indicating that style. And well, the talk isn't about any of these other traditions, but you might be interested if you aren't already Archaeology Southwest members. It's a really great group, and they do fantastic work. And we did share our Sears Point data with them, and they're working with the tribe. And it starts with a K, and I can't pronounce it, but it's down in the Yuma area. And it says someone's entered the waiting room. Did you see that, Richard? Must think I'm the, should I say, anyway. So they are also doing continuing research with our data, which makes me very happy because I've tried for years to get students to go and help down there. And they usually end up choosing different projects. So we went down and did just explore on our own. And this was one of Bob's findings when he was at Quail Point and saw this what looked like perhaps a red painted design. And sure enough, with Photoshop, as you can see on the right, we have a abstract rectilinear image. And so then we thought, well, wonder what else we can find at Sears Point that we didn't notice before. So even though it wasn't red, but this was sort of showing up gray, and wow, here it is, another rectilinear abstract. And we didn't see this little, probably a dragonfly design that was down here at all. So it's sort of fun now with these modern techniques to be able to see things we couldn't see in real when we were there. I'm not going to read all this. It's just trying to show that, well, let me give a little background on the project. We were required to try to use volunteers and teach documentation as part of this project. And it actually sort of morphed because BLM realized after we tried a couple of times, they brought out students from Yuma. And by the time they drove out from Yuma all the way there, and we gave them a brief lesson in documenting, we were lucky to get one or two boulders recorded. And they figured, okay, it would be, we'd probably still be out there working if they continued doing that. So we ended up getting a combination of really qualified volunteers and new people who were trained. And you'll see a lot, well, not all of what was recorded, but some of it. And part of what we did was take all the images and put them into these databases, which now portfolios no longer as they useful on some of the systems. We keep a computer here that can still run it, but regrettably, that's one of the problems with the technology is things keep changing. But here, this one had only 2,256 photos from the first 2 weeks. So you can see the immensity of the data. The one person who got to see it all was Bob. And here he is. The yellow at his feet is the Trimble, I think, with the TerraSync software, which had all the different features on it, so he could say whether it was a trail or whatever. And he got to number them, photograph them. We can see the mugboard at his feet too. So we had, he got to do all the features. And there were things like these rock rings, which, as you can see, were from very small to very large. Some of them were multiple levels high. Some of them were very broad. And I believe Boma Johnson had interviewed some of the tribes near Yuma, the Quechan mostly, and had some information about dance circles or sleeping circles, or in fact, he had a list of maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 possible reasons for these being there. And I just asked Bob earlier today, did you really walk with that GPS, all 37 kilometers of trails? And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. Some of them multiple times. And that wasn't all the walking, because, of course, we had to survey other places, too. But they weren't all trails. Well, since you haven't been out to the desert, let me give a little background, which we would give to all the people that were volunteering with us, is the desert varnish, the desert pavement is fragile. You don't want to be kicking and sloughing along. You're going to disturb it. Notice all the white spots here. That's where somebody's kicked over rocks and it's now exposed the lighter surface underneath. And that's, in fact, what the trail has done is it's worn out from the desert pavement. And but not all of these trails are necessarily human. They could be from animals. They some of them are features like this line down here on this particular aerial photo. That's Bob, by the way, down there. That's me. This is a drone picture of the one feature 6 that we shot with a quadcopter after this project was over in 2014 to this is alignment with the solstices. Let me see. I think the next one we'll talk about Hoskinson's work, because we knew Tom. We were actually out with him on the solstice. And now I've forgotten whether it was winter or summer. Probably winter, because I don't think I would have wanted to have been there in the summer, but I could be wrong. Do you remember, Bob? You can chime in, if ever, or maybe he can't. I don't know if he's
I think it was winter.
oh, Bob says he thinks it was winter when we were there. Anyway, I should have in that previous picture shown that this was the cliff face here. And you could leave it here because I didn't turn it on. He's showing me I have 43 minutes to go. The steepness down to this, and this is over the edge, and so this view looking out to the horizon would have been where sunrise or to the east or sunset to the west would have been. And there's other features. We have only one pot. That was before our time too. It was actually in the National Register nomination, I think, but we did find the location where it was, so that became in our maps. We had grinding slicks and modern fences from the historic times. This is a Native American quarry. But there was a ranch site and then these strange walls, and they figure that they think it was probably ranching period, and they were trying to keep the cattle from coming up to the tops. But there's some unknowns out there. Because it was so complex, and then only were able to do this much in the first year. And so they added on another year for us, and we did that. And then they added on the third year so we could do this one down here. But where we've been is just over here in this little parking area. We've only been looking at this little bit so far. So I thought it's about time, better show you some of these images from the places that I've just been talking about. The South Mesa, those would have been the clusters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here's an anthropomorphic figure with very broad hands, and that's had been one of the things that digitate anthropomorphs are considered key to the Patayan, or they were back then. And so we did find a lot of those. And so that's one of the reasons why this area was of interest, because they were trying to figure out on the borders what cultures might have been there. We did look at these enclosed crosses, and they're these strange ones that are curved. And lots of other things. But this was all in just the southern mesa, and that's, well, the car out there, the signs that the BLM has. And again, you would not have seen this panel from down there. You have to get up and climb among the boulders, and be careful if you do it. We were much younger then. I wouldn't do a lot of this climbing now. Now we've gone up to the what you could see with binoculars from the parking area would be this wonderful panel, and these. You might not find these boulders unless you had, the database we have that has the GPS locations. But you'll certainly find other boulders. In fact, you should ask Richard to show his pictures because you'll get a whole lot more individuals from this particular area. There, Richard, do you see the chuckwalla? I told you you'd like my
Yeah, I see.
I meant to, there was another picture on the other side that actually had one of these that really was a lizard that showed the fat tummy. But I did want to mention something about the leg shapes here because notice over here, this one looks more like the actual lizard here than this one does. And so then how does one interpret and put into a database what it is? And especially like something like this one up here. There's the arms up and the legs up, but no human that I know of can put their legs in that position. And the lizards don't either. So what is it? Also, we'll be later on talking about several of the raid circles where they're in multiples, but here they also occur in singles. And this was particularly interesting because this actually is scratched and it could be relatively recent, although it looks a bit dark in this picture. But this sort of outlined anthropomorph walking along sideways, that's a very unusual way to see it depicted. And we wouldn't know, probably historic or more recent than the others. And one of the features that Don Weaver, our archaeologist on our team, felt was a hunting blind was this one because it's a 1.5 meters or more deep, so plenty of room to crouch down in and look down to see if there's any game down there and sit there with your bow and arrow. And there's a animal here. And so the thought was that this could have been marking that this was a good place to hunt from. And obviously not always do bow and arrows look exactly like bows and arrows. We have other examples to show you later. However, also the interesting thing is that feature was in this region where there were these huge panels up on the cliff face with these lines of animals. I like that they drew the ground line here, but here the animals are going along where there was a change in slope on the cliff face. So they use that as the ground line. And there's some interesting diamond shapes here with also those unusual like legs up and arms down, but it's certainly not an anthro, but we had categories that were unique like that. But there was a trail here that the animals could have gone nearby here to go up. So this may have been pointing out. And on complex panels like this, we also had, thank goodness, several of our volunteers were really good artists who enjoyed doing the drawings of the. But it wasn't just over there right where you parked. Here's this line of animals, and this is 2 kilometers away, really? Yes. We were over here, and now that one was way over here. Oh, and by the way, this is the Gila, and so it's real close over here to where those animals were. Whoops, what happened? What did I do? There. Whereas over here, it was a bit further away. This is 1,000 meters, so it was at least that to get out to the river from there. here you have not only the clusters, but showing the green lines for the trails, the purple lines for the features, and how the density of the patterns are. And later on, you'll also see this feature, which is a double rock alignment from the air. The database was interactive, so you can click on, let's say you wanted to see, oh, what's panel 500? Well, you click on that in that database and it will bring you to this form that has a picture of it. It says there's a decorated staff there and a rectilinear meander up here. And it will also let you link to the actual data. And so this is good for the managers out there to have, because when they find things like Richard found, maybe that was like graffiti, they can go and look at the database and see what was back when we did there and see if there's any changes. And these were some of the forms we filled out. We only measured 4 because we'd probably still be out there if we measured all of each individual element we had. But we tried to pick ones that were sort of obvious so that somebody could then scale the rest of it when they had it. And then this was the form. They could tally up like the major thing we had was just amorphic pecking. There's just a whole lot of things that were indescribable. But look, here's another orchard. This one had a head ornament and a tail. So not all those bows and arrows, we really don't know. We were just trying to be descriptive, I guess is how I should say it. And like for zoom horse, for instance, we would have them if they just sort of were animal-like or tailed or horned, or we'd have insect-like figures or bird-like, because it's difficult. It's not something that even when, and this, oh, come on. I'm going backwards. This comes from northern Arizona, the Tutanvini, and that's where the Hopi and their salt pilgrimage down into the Grand Canyon is. But I have not done a study, and I've tried to get students to help with this. And if anybody wants to help and volunteer here, there's lots that we need help with. But it would be fun to try to match some of these designs that were known clan symbols from up there with what we have down there. We did count what we had, and this is published. One of those references in the chat is to this paper, so you can look at it in more detail if you're really interested. One thing that I mentioned, the amorphic pecking was so big, 1,107. It's not on this. We started it with the next one, high one. And then we didn't plan that it would be this nice a curve, but it was a surprise how the categories worked out. And it's going to be hard for me to show. We'll see, like here, I had students helping pick what images would be for the to display. And so here's another one with those legs up, like really humans don't have, but yet it's called anthropomorphic like. So it's one of those, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. And I think the one up here, which I can't see underneath the thing, is the archer. And then, well, all of this would be in that paper. So if you really want to look at the definitions of some of the imagery that we were recording, check out the paper. Things like nested diamonds. This is nested triangles, actually, I think was connected spirals. There was 3 different categories just of spirals. And all these counts that came in. Well, you can read it. I don't need to read it to you, just to show that what surprised us, we have these major panels, but and 2 of the panels had over 100 individual elements, yet the big ones, these big dramatic ones, were only a little over 2% of the total images out there. 72% of the images out there had 4 or less on those boulders. So you're attracted to maybe the big spectacular ones, but there's a whole lot more going on with putting imagery on rocks. And I hadn't mentioned it yet, but I don't know how many of you have worked with at all documenting rock art, but the change in the patina, how dark, how has it changed back to the color of the rock? Because when you carve through it, you get a lighter surface, like I was showing you on the surface of the ground. Well, the same thing happens on the surface of the rocks. And so this one is the most recent, or it was done older and then repecked. And you have to go up with a hand lens to really tell if you can see the edges as to whether it was old or not. But that helped us with trying to come up with a dating of what we were seeing out there. You saw this in the first slide, but it was important because it does show these are practically the exact same color as the basic basalt that's underneath it. And some of them are quite deep, and yet they've still are quite old. And then you have the medium lighter shades and the medium, and then you have the more recent. They either have repecked the old, or like this bird, most likely it was just totally historic on top, the last thing that was done here. And that's what Don did. He regrettably passed away in 2014, and this was his last major project and report. And in it, he did say that we had the archaic pre-8700, we had the Battalion, and then the present, Native American and Anglo-American from 1800 to present. And a lot of the boulders had this superposition, repecking, when sometimes a new person who's not used to seeing these won't necessarily see it. So Bob and I did try to do a lot of quality control. And in Bob's case, image enhancement, which helped us see. We think these 2 internal circles were probably added later, or I should say pecked over later, and other things like that we can tell from the patina. And then you look at this boulder, we had to record this, I did at least, with binoculars from a distance, because this was balanced on a very tricky spot, looked like it would tip over. And even though we would tell our volunteers they're supposed to walk around the panel to look at it at all sides, that would have been impossible here to do it safely. We also asked for the landscape to be included, because the view shed is really important to a lot of Native people. You want to know the horizon, the prominent peaks and valleys, if you happen to know of any ethnography, or the time of day, the light and shadow interactions. And if there's a trail or if you happen to notice some sort of archaeological feature, let us know, put it on that form. And so I just wanted to show, like, like I did earlier, but this one's really obvious, totally archaic. It's nothing lighter, except maybe just now noticing one over here that may have been repecked or just had dust blend to it. I'd mentioned the mountain lion earlier, that they had probably repicked the mountain lion with the long tail. Well, here's it. Boma Johnson had said this was a real important figure to the Quechan people. And we did see it in several places around. This is an enormous boulder. This doesn't do it justice. I'm sitting up on top of the cliff recording, doing this drawing with binoculars, and I don't see how anybody could have climbed up that. Shamanic flying. Bob's going to roll his eyes over there, but that's what. Bob, you should chime in. Do you remember how high this was? This was an amazing tall boulder. I think he probably flew this with the drone, or I don't have that picture in here though.
It was several meters, but I'm sure people could climb up there.
You could, not me. And of course, the recent, a lot of inscriptions. In fact, some of the people from Yuma were really interested in that. There's been a whole separate document just on the dated inscriptions. And I find it so interesting how now the modern graffiti is just sort of scratch real fast. And look how wonderful, really, though this is very well done as far as the lettering goes. And of course, cupules. And has anybody seen what this is? Is it ours? You need the click of this to show that, hey, it's a ship, the ship of the desert. That was a surprise. That we were back there doing quality control a couple of years after, and this is one of the last ones we found, which I thought was really interesting. These are also in Boma's work, and he did, by the way, one of the Arizona Archaeological Society's publications, Earth Figures, the Arizona Archaeologists, number 20. I think they're thinking about publishing it. Has some of the not the petroglyphs, but that has the ground figures from Sears Point. We had Jane Colbert out there. Some of you may know her. She's certainly well renowned in rock art documentation, and she would like to do some of the drawing for us. And there's those trails again. Why am I showing this? Well, that's because when we did the documentation, we said, okay, tell us whether you're doing it along a trail, whether you're just at a boulder, whether you're near a cliff face or up on top. When we did the data, boom, are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing? Look at this big blue blob here and a little blue strip here, and there's no blue hardly over there. Wow, that's one result. It turns out that cupules are statistically significantly more on top than and on boulders than they are in the other places. And look at zoomorphs. There are very few zoomorphs on top, but most of them were up along the cliff face, like I was showing you, those ones walking up the cliff. So at least it was, I think, interesting to do some of the statistics. And this, of course, shows how there could be an isolated boulder. And so they would record it and say, hey, it's along the trail. And these cupules are up on top. This one was a boulder cupule, but it was also pecked over older glyphs. And that's fairly rare that they did that. They did have those up, the cupules being on top. Whoever was doing the cupules with their special ceremonies had the best views. And on the main Sears Point Mesa West, above that double alignment I was talking about, there's Bob over in the distance. The white there is a lot of times on these rocks, the birds would love to perch. And sometimes it would affect the rock art that was on them, but the petroglyphs actually are over here. But he's down here. There's the drone up in the sky. And actually, of course, I was also shooting the picture of the drone. But this was this long rock alignment down to a big feature down here, which probably they thought was an old pueblo, perhaps. There's that rock alignment, the picture from the drone. And the archaeologist got all excited because he hadn't seen all these what looked like outline rectilinear alignments over here, that there was some other feature that they had not noticed on the ground, which shows, I think, the value of aerial mapping with drones. And that one boulder that was near the other one, you have a pecked edge on top. We would also ask the people to record if they saw this pecked edge. And here's one of these sort of really strange anthropomorphs with a strange headdress, or is it a lizard with, an insect like? How does one determine what this is? We wondered if perhaps I did, at least when you look out to the horizon, if this isn't pointing to something, or if these aren't, that perhaps they were intentionally aligned. And that's a study that I wish I could get some college student to work on a dissertation for, because I think there's probably questions that can be answered out at Sears Point that we should be working on. I like here, notice that that's a pecked edge. And I see this a lot at other sites too. And are those pointing to something? The knowledge may, of course, have gone away with there's been a long time span of usage, but some of the traditions are carried on by these traditional people. Light and shadow. I love this one because we just happened on it at this time, and I just see this wonderful profile, this mouth sort of right here next to this animal, the nose and the eye that's been abraded out to really look like, and you wonder, okay, what's it looking up at? We should come back and study this at other times of day, other times of year. We have lots of these rayed circle variants, and a lot of times they would come in groups of 4. And again, another source of information that could be used for some studies, because way over 2 kilometers away is this one, where there we have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is on a different surface than that. So it's interesting that in different lighting, hey, I see those 2. The other 2, what happened to them? They've gone away. Unless you have really good eyes and know they're there, you're not going to see those. And that happens at many of these sites. We would have our volunteers have reflectors. They were supposed to, if we're there on a sunny day, they had to shade it. We were there on a shady day. We tried to come back on a sunny day so we could see it under different lighting, because there, I think, were main reasons, or they were placed there for particular times for particular reasons. This is, I'm not going to go into detail about it unless Bob wants to chime in, but it was an interesting way to, and if you read all this, you can see that it's 6 rings out from the center, so it's showing its angle Whereas if you're on the edge, you're going to be more like 90 degrees. You're going to be more horizontal if you're near the center. So when you look at all the data from that we had, you can see that along the edge is where for Sears Point East, and that was the one that was facing out toward the Gila. That's where most of these glyphs were. And oh, I didn't mention on the other, but the blue is ones that were when they were facing down. But if you're going to be looking up to see that and it's angling up to the sky, perhaps that's something that you could take this data and go and study those and see what glyphs are associated with them, and have a dissertation project. So in fact, here's just what I wanted to show. It doesn't look like it's overhang, but that's just the way the picture orientation is. That this was so that you had to look up to see that grid. Is it a net, or was the ethnography in several of the tribes in California and in southern Arizona mention this pattern being associated with the Milky Way? So much research potential down in this wonderful place. And there's lots of good information at their new signs they put up. But we wanted to see it. You've been seeing it mostly from the ground. Now, let's try this. See? The view from the hot air balloon. Yes, we did some really fun ways of documenting, I think. And this is our track. And we did get to see things like the Agua Caliente racetrack, which is in that Bowman Johnson report, but which Don updated because we could see more details, of course, with our bird's eye view. And there's these rock piles, there's rock alignments, there's this is an actual foot trail that goes down the cliff, and there are petroglyphs along the boulder there too. I mean, along the cliff face. And just so many trails. And I know that we know that the Odom have a salt trail. They've mentioned it to me too in talking with the archaeologists down there, that yes, it did go along there and through there. And we found shell on some of these sites. So we're pretty sure there was lots of transport all the way down to the Gulf of California. But some of these could be animal tracks. Lots of, again, more information that could be obtained. Here's another one of these major geoglyphs that covers this whole mesa top. It's sort of serpentine-like, although it has these sort of legs, trails off of it. There's cupules on each end. There's rock piles. There's petroglyphs. And so Don updated the diagram. If you do get the Arizona archaeologist, you'd see this is the updated version of it. And we did high resolution photography with the Gigapan. And so this is the view from down at the parking lot or near there of, like I was saying, you'd need binoculars to see some of those. So let's see what shooting with the Gigapan will do. Oh, hey, we can look at it in more detail. And even closer. And what was really fun was up on top, we found this rock alignment that was shaped like this petroglyph down below with what we were calling a decorated staff. Don Weaver did his survey feature form, drew it, found a mound of cinders nearby, and other things had associated artifacts with it. And so it's this type of data that's available for researchers who might want to do some more work down there. we thought it would, Bob did this. He thought, oh, it would be fun to find, he liked these yoke figures, he was calling them. I called them appendage yeah, diamond shapes, enclosed crosses and these decorated staffs. And you can see that the yoke are then the green ones are only over here on the east side, just that small little area. Whereas the golden ones, the decorated staves, they're on the tops of a lot of the higher of these mesas, but the enclosed crosses are all over. There's some special ones that are sort of weird shapes that were scattered around. And I see enclosed crosses actually all over the world. I could do a whole paper just on that. Here's some of the variants. I think I showed this one earlier, the curved one there. And sometimes they're open and sometimes they're closed even. And sometimes they're just cross shapes. And in Mesoamerica, they will sometimes look at those and go, oh, that's Venus. But we don't know that there's been that connection up to here. Here again, I'm going to point out Sears Point because there was one other study done that was of much interest that related the data that was from Antelope Hill, which is over here. And so it's along the Gila, and they had, we tried to categorize ours to fit with the categories they had already published. And even though it was only comparing 358 to 9,689, boy, right away, what did I see? Look at this big purple, 13% zoomorphs, and they only had 2% zoomorphs. We had 8% of anthropomorphs, and they had 17. So just in that short distance, there are definitely differences in the percentages of the different types of imagery that was there. And we had quite a bit more curvilinear. I mean, they had more curvilinear, and we had more rectilinear. But those data sets are pretty wide apart too, but at least it was interesting. And this was, I thought, one of the more fun. We took a whole lot of time and some image enhancement to say, what really are we looking at here? Oh, I think I see a leg. I think I see a foot. Oh, there's another leg. There's another foot. And an image enhancement, maybe you can see them a little better. This one has nice head with a smiley face even. And the design, a blanket, two people under a blanket. How common is that? Well, friend said, oh, sure, I've seen this in members' pots. I've seen it in New Mexico. And hey, if any of you have seen this in another place, I'd sure like to know. I liked it when I showed it to a Hopi friend. He laughed and said, oh, it was just meant for fun. But there's just is lots of fun things that we did while we were down there, and we're very grateful for the people that helped us. You may know some of these folks. Of course, the BLM archaeologists, we couldn't have done the work without them, and all of these wonderful volunteers, some of whom you may know. And thank you. I have no idea what time is. I was trying to go fast.
No, that was great. I think you created more questions than you answered.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, just looking at petroglyphs takes on a whole new meaning, especially when you can see them categorized and see some of the similarities.
That's very interesting. Any
Well,
questions?
Yes, I have a question. Was that Boma Johnson, the fellow that was a rager in California with the intaglio things?
Yes, he worked in California also. He was a BLM archaeologist for 17 years at Sears Point. But he did that, the Arizona archaeologists' earth figures included all along the river corridor there, the Colorado River, on both sides, California and Arizona. Do you want me to stop sharing, I guess? Whoops, what happened?
Yeah, that's
There.
great. Comes back to
Thank you
your
very
full
much.
picture.
Any idea how they got up on those sides of the cliffs to carve this stuff?
Yeah, without falling.
Well, if you're in your 20s,
Yeah.
those are no problem at all.
Well, and
Now, I-
and also they do have, at least in Canyon de Chelly where we worked, Canyon del Muerto, there were still remnants of these interesting ladders that they had that were made from a log, and they had notches in them, and they could put those up against, and you could climb up that if it was if you didn't have a hand and toe holds. So I don't know that they did that down there because there weren't trees, like there are up near Canyon de Chelly, but they probably could have done some pretty creative things to get up there, piled rocks even.
The animals that they had, like their heads pointing up and their feet pointing at each other, look like they could fold, but any idea what the significance of that is?
No. I wish I knew. That's one of the things I thought we ought to be able to try to understand if, well, I don't know. I don't think my friend, whose name is escaping me, who does the sign language, she might have had experience with some other groups that had that as some sort of signal about what it might mean, but I don't know. I can't hear.
Oh, we're just talking.
They're just talking back and forth amongst themselves.
Oh,
So
okay. I thought it was asking a question.
Evelyn, this is John.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Out at Barstow, there is a intaglio, a turtle intaglio, fairly well researched, and it orientates north with the head to the north. Now, roaming around many, many different rock art sites, I've seen turtles, and I just want to share this. I haven't really worked out the statistics, but more than half the time, they seem to point north. So I think you're correct that some of these figures are directional.
Thank you. That's interesting. I'll start looking. I know I've seen turtle figures throughout northern Arizona, so I'll have to start seeing if I can come up with an orientation for turtles.
Absolutely. Again, you can see the large one there just north of the city of Barstow from, Google Earth and so forth. And,
Oh, yeah. Bob and I have been fortunate to go out with the drone and, to Barstow. I don't remember exactly that one. In fact, we have a friend who said that they know that there's more in the area, and we haven't been back to.
I think we've took the
You
drone
did the
over to
turtle?
the turtle. I'm pretty sure.
I'd have to go look at our database. Got me interested now. I have a friend, Kelly Hayes Gilpin, archaeologist here at NAU, and she loves turtles, so she'd be interested too.
Well, the thing with the turtle is in some cultures, ancient ones, of course, they associate it with north. So could be. I'm not sure.
And in those ethnographies, was it based on like constellation, or something? That why would the turtle be associated with north?
Well, the head points north, and the arms or legs of it do have some of the alignments with the rising of the stars.
Hmm.
I
Do you have a
forget,
reference?
there's a real nice presentation. I forget the fellow's name, but he presented out there at the San Diego Rock Art Association with Ken Hedges. So they've got some of the data out there from his presentation, but it was fairly convincing.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, is there any other questions or comments that people would like to make? Well, Evelyn, I think you had a fantastic talk, and I really got a lot out of it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And like I say, if they want to see more
Thank
pictures,
you.
shoot some of yours.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely share some of my pictures with anybody and everybody, so,
I do have a question though. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
okay.
Any idea the tools that they used to peck and carve just a rock on a rock, or?
Yes, most of them are just either direct percussion or indirect. They use one rock as a chisel and another as a hammer.
Okay.
And they do just scratch some of them. Of course,
Just like the Egyptians did back when they were doing all the stuff they were doing.
yeah, but
Well,
no, they
we
didn't
found,
steel tools, so it was just rock.
yeah, and we found many, I shouldn't say many, but certainly several examples of the actual tool. In fact, I should have put in that picture of because it was right next to one where there was amorphic pecking, and they had left the hammerstone is what we would be recording those as. You know, if we saw that at a site, we would say, okay, we found the hammerstone, and take a picture of it. And in some cases in California, Southern California, they've been quartz and quartz crystals even used. So in different places, you may have preferences like basalt in some, because I mean, it depends on what you have access to. In Texas, it would probably be flint. So yes, and usually you can look at there's so many pebbles and cobbles at Sears Point. We certainly didn't flag every time we saw a hammerstone, but they're out there, and we would. That's why it is a natural preserve and an archaeological preserve, and so of course everything's protected. But I do worry about things walking away, and hopefully people are respectful when they're there.
Didn't they also use like the black onyx?
Black onyx? I don't recall.
Maybe different areas they might have, never know.
Well, they would use what
Whatever
they had available.
Yeah.
Well, in some places in Texas, in the Pecos River area, and they found medicine bags, and in the bags there, this would be in archaeological digs, and there'd be stones in there that could have come from faraway places, but they were then used for particular purposes. So sometimes the person in charge of the ceremony or whatever, or the one who was assigned to do the pecking, who knows, had the tools to do it.
Can you let me share my screen?
Sure. Okay, you should be able to now.
Ah,
Yeah. See that.
do we have the directionality of it, Bob?
Can you hear us, Bob?
I'd have to go back to the original images to get the orientation. I don't know it offhand.
What's the size of that?
Well, you can
Well,
see
There's
us,
the people for scale.
Oh, it is from scale.
Yeah, it's fairly large.
Looks like it.
Well, these
Uh,
are trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are car tracks, aren't they?
Yeah, these are car tracks, it
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah, it's many, many meters, maybe 30, 40 feet across in the circle, a large circle in the center.
Wow.
we can-
And the head up there, the what looks like a head, does point north.
This one here.
Interesting.
Why, to me, it looks nothing like a turtle. Looks like a circle with spokes.
Yeah. Too many arms and legs.
Well, they just call it that.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm certainly not convinced that it's a turtle.
Yeah, me either. I think if they really wanted to have it as a turtle, it would look a lot more like a turtle. It probably has those points are probably directional, and they probably had meaning to the people who were making it for some directionality, either pointing to a sacred mountain or pointing to perhaps a path or trail that went to some other resource, maybe even the river or whatever that I'm thinking also like up at Medicine Wheel in Wyoming. There's traditions all over the US of sort of fairly similar things where you have a circle and you have alignments to important places in the landscape. And
And
think about it, if you lived back before television or whatever, and you were trying to live off the land, you need to know where you were and how to get to the resources. And so you need to know the stars. You need to know those mountains and how to get there, even if they're cloudy. So yes, there's a lot of reasons for having these images along trails and for having occasional geoglyphs out there to reinforce if you have the initiated people who can come and learn what they mean and then pass it on to the future generations. That knowledge can go along. And some is meant to be shared with others and some is not. So we know that there's been a lot of information that's lost with like say a particular clan has the last member has passed, and if were things that they were not allowed to share unless you were initiated, nope, nobody else was going to learn that. It went with them, not just here in America. That we hear those stories in Australia and Africa, other places.
Well, all of that is very interesting, and hopefully we'll have you come back and do another segment on something else. There's so much more information to share. Well, with that, if there's nothing else, I will go ahead and end this meeting, and thank you again for being our speaker.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Wow.